In this video, we're going to look at nomenclature as a whole. So this is an overview of all nomenclature. We're going to do that using this flowchart. So at the very top, we have our compounds. The very first question you should ask yourself when you look at your compound is there a metal? Or is there ammonium? When you're asking yourself this question, is there a metal or ammonium? You're identifying whether there is a cation or not. So if the answer to this question is yes, then you're dealing with an ionic compound. If you know you're dealing with an ionic compound, the next question you want to ask yourself is the metal in is the metal in groups 1, 2, or 3? Is the metal in groups 1, 2, or 3? All of those metals have fixed charges. Or is the metal zinc, cadmium, or silver? What you're doing with this question is asking, is the metal in my ionic compound? Does it have a fixed charge or not? So remember, metals in groups 1, 2, or 3, zinc, cadmium, and silver all have fixed charges. So if the answer to that question is yes, that means you have a cation with a fixed charge. And that means you're going to name it by naming the metal plus the anion name. Now, if you have ammonium, which is not a metal, then you'll just name it as ammonium followed by the anion name. Remember, to name a monatomic cation, you take the metal name followed by the word atom or ion. Since this is an ionic compound, we don't want the word ion in it, so we just use the metal name. Now, if the answer to that question is no, that means that your cation has multiple charges. So to name that, you're going to do the metal name plus a Roman numeral plus the anion name. And remember, the Roman numeral represents the charge. It represents the charge. It does not represent how many of that is in, how many of that metal is in the compound. It only represents the charge of that metal. Okay, so is there a metal or is there ammonia? Yes, you have an ionic compound. If you have ammonia or ammonium, just go straight to naming it cation name followed by the anion name. So, is there a metal? Yes. Is it is the metal in groups 1, 2, or 3, or zinc, cadmium, silver? If the answer is that to yes, if the answer to that is yes, then you have a cation with a fixed charge. If the answer of that is no, then you have a cation with multiple charges, and you have to use Roman numerals. Now, in your original question, is there a metal or ammonium? If the answer of that is no, then you're dealing with a covalent compound. The next question you want to ask yourself is, does the formula start with H? Remember, start with H, not contains H. If the answer to that is yes, then you're dealing with a acid. And when you're naming acids, you want to look at the anion. You want to look at the anion that is present in the molecular formula and name the acid according to that. Remember, if the anion ends with "ide," it is a hydroic acid. If the anion ends with, or if the anion has the prefix "pre" and then "ate," it is going to be an ic acid. If the anion has a suffix of "ate," sorry, this should be per-ic acid. There we go. If the anion ends with "ate," then you have an ic acid. If the anion ends with "ite," then you have an us acid. And finally, if you have an anion that starts with hypo and ends with "ite," you have a hypo us acid. All right, so is there a metal in my compound? No. Does the formula start with H? Yes. Then it is an acid. All right, but remember, acids must be aqueous. So if it's not aqueous, then you're not dealing with an acid. All right, finally, if your covalent compound does not start with H or it's in the gas phase, then you're dealing with a molecule. And remember, with molecules, we use the Greek prefixes to identify how many of each atom is in the molecule. Nomenclature takes a ton of practice. If you use this flowchart, you will be much more successful in your practice. So make sure you get that practice in.